A relationship rarely ends in a single moment. It unravels quietly like the ticking of a clock in the dark. You begin to notice the shift. Her eyes no longer linger on you, but pass through you. Like you're part of the furniture, her voice shortens, her smile fades, and every time you ask, "Are you okay?" she replies, "I'm fine," but you know she's not. She's retreating, not physically, but emotionally. There's no dramatic goodbye, no final speech, just silence growing between words. And that silence is where love starts to leave. Most men don't realize it when it begins. They sense something's wrong, but they can't name it. Not until the absence becomes undeniable, and by then, she's already halfway gone. And then you react not because you're foolish, but because you care. You believe that if you just try a little harder, things will return to how they were. So you text more, ask more, plan romantic evenings, buy gifts she used to love. But the harder you try, the smaller you feel. Because every attempt to prove your love quietly tells her, "I need you to feel like I'm enough." And in that moment, the balance between you tips. She becomes the one who grants validation, and you become the one hoping to be chosen. The tragedy isn't that she stopped caring. It's that you started chasing her approval instead of standing in your own. Love built on fear of loss isn't love at all, it's self-abandonment in disguise. If you take a breath and sit with the silence, you'll realize something powerful. Your reaction will never bring her back, but it can erase what's left of your dignity. The Stoics teach us not to chase what we can't control, but to rule what's within us. When you stop trying to earn back what's drifting away and choose instead to ground yourself in peace, everything changes, not for her, but for you. Your calm isn't indifference, and it's not manipulation. It's a declaration: I see what's happening, and I still choose to stand tall. That kind of silence speaks volumes. It doesn't beg, it doesn't explain. It simply says, I will not lose myself to keep someone who has already left me emotionally. And that, more than any word, is what she never expected. When a woman senses your fear of losing her, the dynamic silently shifts. She doesn't have to say a word, all she needs to do is pull back slightly. And you'll start filling the gap with overcompensation, more messages, more reassurance, more trying. You might not see it, but she does, and what she sees is someone no longer rooted, but reaching. That reaching doesn't pull her closer, it pushes her away. Because attraction doesn't live in desperation, it lives in presence. What once made her admire you, your self-possession, your quiet confidence, has now been replaced by insecurity. And the moment you need her to feel worthy, you stop being the man she once chose, not because you aren't enough, but because you've started acting like you aren't. But if you slow down, if you truly listen, you'll hear a deeper wisdom. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Her withdrawal, her coldness, her changing affection, those are outside events. Your response, that's yours to own. The Stoic man doesn't beg. He doesn't chase approval, he notices. But he doesn't collapse, he feels the weight of change, but chooses to remain unmoved. This isn't apathy, it's strength without spectacle. It's the art of standing still when every part of you wants to run. A woman might expect anger, or sadness, or even a dramatic plea. But what she never sees coming is peace, unshaken, undisturbed, uninterested in proving anything. That's the moment she begins to question what she thought she understood about you. There's a paradox that few speak of. The moment you stop needing her, she begins to feel your absence, not just physically, but energetically. The silence becomes louder than any words you could have spoken, not because you're punishing her, but because you're reclaiming something she never truly had, your self-worth. She thought you needed her to feel whole. And maybe, for a time, you believed that too. But now you step back, not with resentment, but with clarity. She expected the chase, she expected to be needed. But when that need dissolves, so does her illusion of control, and suddenly, what she once overlooked becomes painfully visible. You were never hers to control, you were simply offering your love freely. And now, that offer has been withdrawn. One of the most powerful Stoic truths is this: you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. When you truly hold that in your heart, it becomes absurd to spend your precious breath convincing someone to love you. A woman pulling away might tempt you to abandon your standards, to become someone you're not in hopes of being enough. But when you lose yourself for love, you're not being romantic, you're being forgetful. Forgetful of your mortality, your dignity, and your center. If she doesn't value the real you, then you're not a mirror, you're a mask, and that's a prison. The Stoic man doesn't sell his soul for attention. He honors it by refusing to act out of fear, and in doing so, he preserves the one thing worth more than her approval: his own self-respect. You don't need to raise your voice or argue. You don't need to explain or defend. The woman pulling away may test you: silence, mixed signals, attempts to provoke you. But your silence, grounded in truth and not in resentment, is your sharpest edge. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy, Marcus Aurelius said. She may manipulate, withdraw affection, or expect a dramatic response, but you don't play her game. You stay still. You hold frame. You remain unbothered. Your discipline becomes your armor, and your emotional self-control becomes your shield. She won't know how to respond to that. She thought you'd break. Instead, you rise, because when you stay calm under fire, you become uncheckable, and nothing confuses someone who's used to having power over your emotions more than the realization that they never truly did. She can walk away, that's her right, but what she cannot do is make you abandon your principles. What stands in your way now is not rejection, it's redirection. The obstacle is the way. Marcus reminds us, use the pain, not to plead, but to realign. Stop thinking you need her love to validate your value. You don't. Very little is needed for a happy life. It is all within yourself. Her leaving is not your undoing unless you decide it is. You have nothing to prove and no one to impress. Don't explain. Don't chase. Don't argue. Instead, embody. Be the man you know you are, not for her, but for the life you were meant to live. Let your stillness speak. Let your absence echo. Let your silence carry more weight than any reaction ever could. That is Stoic strength, not louder, just deeper. When a woman begins to drift emotionally, most men don't walk away, they try harder. Not out of weakness, but out of fear. You think, if I just show her how much I care, maybe she come back. So you give more, plan more, text more, offer more. But slowly, without noticing, love becomes a sales pitch. You're no longer showing up as yourself. You're auditioning, hoping she choose you again. And here's the danger. The more you try to prove you're worthy, the less she feels the need to value you, because it's no longer love. It's a negotiation, and you're negotiating from a place of desperation. You become a product she didn't ask for, wrapped in effort she never requested. That's not power, that's erosion. And the more you try to be enough for her, the further you drift from being enough for yourself. There was a man named Darius, thoughtful, loyal, intentional. A man who gave his best to the woman he loved. But one day, he noticed her growing distant. Her smile felt thinner, her body colder. She stopped reaching for his hand, stopped laughing at his jokes. Darius didn't get angry. Instead, he went deeper into love. He wrote her notes. He booked a surprise weekend. He bought her a necklace with her favorite gemstone. She thanked him, but her warmth was gone. Then, one day, she said she needed space, and he begged. He pleaded. He promised to change, but she left anyway. Years later, Darius would reflect on that moment with pain, not because she left, but because in trying to win her back, he lost himself. And that loss stayed longer than she ever did. His mistake wasn't loving her, it was loving her more than he loved his own boundaries. When someone stops valuing you, the answer isn't to campaign for your worth. It's to remember that your worth was never hers to grant. The more you try to make her see who you are, the more you confirm that you've forgotten it yourself. That's the trap, proving yourself to someone who once loved you, but no longer sees you the same way. That's not a relationship anymore, that's a performance. A Stoic man does not perform for love. He offers it freely and withdraws it silently when it's no longer received. Not to hurt, not to manipulate, but to protect what's sacred. And when you leave with calm, not bitterness, your absence speaks more than your words ever could. Let her wonder why you didn't beg. Let her feel the silence where need once lived. Let her sit with the echo of what she lost. Toward the end of a fading relationship, what she expects isn't flowers or apologies, it's your reaction. She waits for anger, for pleading, for some dramatic display of pain. She needs it to confirm she still holds emotional weight in your life. But when you offer none of that, when you simply fall silent, not out of spite, but out of acceptance, she's forced into a space she never prepared for: accountability. You haven't fought back, so there's nothing to blame. You haven't begged, so there's nothing to reject. You haven't played games, so there's no defense mechanism left. Now she must face the truth. She didn't just walk away from someone who loved her, she lost someone who didn't need her to stay whole. And that realization hits deeper than any words ever could. Most people don't realize they're treating love like a trade until the other person stops playing along. When you go quiet, not to manipulate, but because your heart is done asking to be seen, you break the rhythm. You once gave freely, affection, loyalty, presence. And now, without bitterness, you withdraw it. That withdrawal isn't revenge. It's clarity. It's the simple understanding that love is not a debt, and you are not a salesman. You're not here to keep proving your worth to someone who stopped looking. And when she senses that, when she feels the absence of your need, her illusion crumbles. You were never begging, you were offering. But the offer expired the moment it became expected. That's not cold. That's sacred. And that's what stings. You're no longer waiting to be received. She thought you'd always be there, that you'd check in, that you'd chase. But instead, you're simply gone, not angrily, not vindictively, just gone with peace in your step and dignity in your silence. And that absence doesn't just feel empty, it feels unsettling, because it isn't about where you went. It's about what you took with you: certainty, stability, energy. You were her mirror, and now there's only air. The truth is, you were never trying to control her, you were anchoring the space. And without you, the room doesn't feel the same. Now she sits with her own reflection, and the silence speaks louder than your presence ever did. It doesn't scream. It whispers. You lost someone who stood still when everything else shook. And that, more than anger, is what finally breaks the illusion. You can do everything right, show up on time, say I love you daily, plan for a future together. But if your presence no longer makes her feel alive, your actions will fade into the background. Women don't stay for deeds, they stay for the energy. For the unspoken current between two people that makes her feel seen, safe, and stirred. It's not the grand gestures, it's the inner gravity. If your presence lacks purpose, if your energy feels like it's asking for reassurance instead of radiating self-trust, she will slowly detach regardless of how hard you try. The truth is, what you give matters less than what you embody. She needs to feel something when she's around you. Not because you're performing, but because you're anchored. And once she no longer feels that pull, your effort becomes background noise. A woman starts to pull away the moment she senses that her opinion of you defines your worth. When everything you say, do, or become revolves around how she responds, she stops respecting it. Not because she's cruel, but because she can't be your mirror. Your value must come from within. If her mood dictates your confidence, you're no longer leading your life, you're orbiting hers. And that's where attraction dies. She may not say it, but she feels it. You're no longer rooted, you're seeking approval. And once she sees that, she begins to distance herself, not because she wants to hurt you, but because she no longer feels held by you. You're not her anchor. You've become a question mark. And she's not looking for answers. She's looking for someone who already knows who he is with or without her. The paradox is this: the moment you stop chasing, she starts remembering. She recalls not just your actions, but your presence. The way you took up space without apology. The way you remained calm without needing her approval. That energy stays, even in your absence. Especially in your absence, because now, she realizes you didn't just walk away. You walked away without collapsing. And that's what lingers, not your texts, not your gifts, but the fact that your peace didn't depend on her affection. You were full, not because she filled you, but because you never came to her empty. And now that she can't feel that presence anymore, the silence becomes heavier than the noise. It becomes a mirror. Not of who you were with her, but of who she failed to see clearly until it was too late. Most people believe strength lies in fighting to keep love alive. But true strength is knowing when to stop fighting, not because you've stopped loving, but because you've started remembering who you are. When you look into the eyes of someone who no longer respects you, and you still choose peace over proving yourself, that's real power. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means you refuse to shrink yourself to fit inside a connection that's lost its balance. A Stoic man doesn't cling to what no longer aligns with his worth. He doesn't stay where he's merely tolerated. He walks not to escape, but to return. Return to his center, return to his clarity, return to the truth that no external bond is worth sacrificing the integrity of the man within. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but his first conquest was always his own mind. You may never wear a crown, but your inner kingdom matters more than any title. When a woman pulls away, your battle isn't with her, it's with your own thoughts. If you don't rule them, they'll turn her silence into obsession, her distance into self-doubt. But if you hold the line within, if you remain the master of your emotions, her departure becomes a detour, not a collapse. She may leave without closure. She may say nothing at all, but that does not define you. You are not broken because someone changed. You remain whole because you chose not to abandon yourself just to feel needed. That's what makes you unbreakable, not her return, but your refusal to fall apart in her absence. Sometimes it's not the storm that teaches you who you are, it's the silence after it. She may have expected chaos. She may have expected you to reach out, to fall apart, to prove your pain. But instead, she's met with stillness, not cold, not bitter, just steady. And that steady presence, even in absence, is louder than any argument. You don't react, you don't explain. You don't chase. You simply remain grounded in yourself, and over time, that groundedness becomes a weight she didn't know she was carrying. Not because you're trying to hurt her, but because she's now feeling what it's like to lose a man who stayed rooted when everything else was shaking, and in that stillness, you become unforgettable not by force, but by essence. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about your neighbors unless it is with a view to some mutual benefit." In modern terms, stop obsessing over what she thinks. Stop decoding her texts, dissecting her silences, chasing meaning in her moods. That's not love, that's emotional self-abandonment. Every second you spend inside her imagined thoughts is a second stolen from your own clarity. A Stoic man doesn't linger in questions that don't serve him. He doesn't waste his sacred energy interpreting someone else's indifference. If her actions don't align with presence, affection, or effort, the message is already clear. You don't need a closure conversation. You don't need a final verdict. You need discipline to withdraw your attention from where it's not respected. Let her silence speak for itself. And let your silence be your final word. She may no longer call you amazing. She may forget the things you did. She may even act like none of it mattered, but her memory is not your measure. Your value isn't assigned by her perception, it lives in how you carry yourself without applause. A mountain does not lower itself when someone fails to admire it, and neither should you. The moment you believe you need her validation to feel whole, you've handed her your power. And the man who gives away his power becomes forgettable. But the man who stands tall even in silence leaves a mark that lingers far longer than approval ever could. You don't need her praise. You don't even need her understanding. You only need to remember, you were complete before her and you remain complete without her. Your mind is either a sanctuary or a battlefield. The difference is what you choose to hold on to. Marcus said it clearly, you have power over your mind, not outside events, so take back that power. Stop checking her profile. Stop rehearsing conversations you'll never have. Stop replaying her absence like it's your fault. Let her go, fully. Not because you hate her, but because you finally love your peace more than your fantasies. You've carried her in your thoughts for long enough, and now, you get to choose freedom. That's not an act of cruelty, it's an act of maturity. Because letting go of someone who's already gone is not the end of a love story. It's the beginning of self-respect, and the man who walks away clean without apology, without drama, is the man she never saw coming. At some point, every man reaches a crossroads. One path is familiar: chase her, wait for signs, decode silence, beg for a return. The other path is harder: walk away with dignity, even while your heart still aches. The truth is, the relationship may not have ended when she left, it may have ended the moment you started fearing your own solitude. Ask yourself, are you waiting for her, or are you just afraid of standing still? Because there's nothing noble about staying where you're no longer invited. The longer you wait for her to choose you again, the further you drift from choosing yourself. Awakening doesn't happen when she comes back. It happens when you stop needing her to. When you choose your peace over your fear, your path over her presence, your center over your craving, that's the real turning point, and it's yours to take. You loved her, you showed up, you gave deeply. But now, She's gone, or maybe worse, she's half present, and still. You choose not to collapse. That calm, it confuses her. It's not the silence of manipulation or revenge. It's not sulking. It's a silence that says, I won't betray myself to convince you. She expected need. She expected noise. She expected breakdowns, long texts, and late-night regrets, but you offered none of it. You offered presence and then you offered absence, equally whole. That kind of balance can't be faked. It can't be forced. It has to be lived. And when you live that truth calm, grounded, detached from outcome, you no longer belong to the emotional roller coaster she's used to controlling. You've become steady, and that steadiness, even in distance, is what she feels the most. Walking away doesn't always mean leaving someone behind. Sometimes it means finally returning to who you were before you started bending to be enough. She may have walked out, but now you're the one truly gone. Not out of rage, not out of spite, but from understanding. Understanding that your worth is not something to perform for, that love doesn't require you to beg, that dignity doesn't require noise. You didn't abandon her, you just stopped abandoning yourself. That's the kind of strength that doesn't shout. It just radiates, and long after you've gone quiet, long after she no longer hears from you, she will feel that. Not the drama, not the chaos, but the echo of a man who loved without losing himself. The kind of man who doesn't need to punish her to be unforgettable. Just a man who chose peace and became untouchable.